there's many different ways to think to generate a positive motivation. Usually, we want to conclude with the wish, the aspiration to achieve full enlightenment in order to best work for the welfare of all sentient beings. But there's many, many different ways to think to generate a positive motivation. Yesterday we briefly thought about four immeasurable thoughts, but you can think about more or less any aspect of the Buddhist teachings and then connect it to the aspiration to achieve enlightenment in order to benefit sentient beings. So anyway, just take a few moments and think it whatever way you like. And try to generate a positive motivation before engaging in the session this morning. So then visualize yourself surrounded by all sentient beings, with your father and male friends and relatives on your right, your mother on your left, and then your female family and friends to your left. Those who irritate or annoy you, and most particularly becoming angry with, seated directly in front of you, facing towards you. And then all other sentient beings seated around. And feel how you're connected with all of these sentient beings, with all of these people, animals, and so forth. Think how all of your happiness depends upon all these sentient beings. And then, if you like, visualize in the space before you, at the level of your forehead, Shakyamuni Buddha, seated on a lion throne, and surrounded by other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So visualize representations of the Buddha, of the Dharma, and the Sangha, the three rare sublime jewels of refuge. And then briefly reflect on their ability to protect you, to protect you and others from suffering, sufferings of this life, sufferings of future lives, all the suffering of samsara, and to lead you and others to a state of freedom from samsara, and the highest joy of perfect enlightenment. So then we'll recite these praises and the refuge in Bodhisattva. So on page 73. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious destroyer, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakti clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go to refuge. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When, O supreme amongst humans, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides, then said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise then, I prostrate. With pure bodies, form supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. With the supreme signs, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. Dust free like you with the 3 worlds end, incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, you, the one gone to restness, I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachment, the virtue that frees one from the lower realms, the one path to sublime pure reality, to the Dharma that pacifies I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, you, the sublime community containing virtue, I prostrate. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all 3 ever divine homage, to all worthy of respect, bowing with bodies as many as all realms atoms in all aspects, with supreme faith I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual aberration, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the 4 faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. I prostrate to the Arya Triple Gem. Thus did I hear at one time the Bhagwan was dwelling on Master Vulture's Mountain in Rajgriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagwan was absorbed in a concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, and beheld those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara: how should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra: Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, convolutional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no eye element, and so on, up to and including no mind element, and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction, origin, and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, Bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment and reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared, Kayata Om Gade Gade Kara Gade Kara Sum Gade Bodhiswaha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from concentration and commanded the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the age, it is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharai Bodhiputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. Then we'll skip to page 98. Page 98. Offer a short mandala and request to come to the Dharma, and then recite the prayer for refuge of Bodhisattva. This ground, anointed with perfumes, streaming flowers, adorned with Mount Mary, four continents, the sun, and the moon, I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer. May all living beings enjoy this pure light. O holy and perfect pure light, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of the Dharma congregation, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create to extend the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create to extend the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create to explain the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. So that concludes the preliminary prayers. So today we'll continue with chapter 4 in the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. We didn't do any meditation really after looking at the verses. We looked at verses in chapter 4, verses 1 through 12 yesterday. Mostly it was talking about the drawbacks of abandoning bodhicitta or letting one's bodhicitta decline. So today we're looking at, well, I'm not sure how far we'll get. We'll start at verse 12 again, and then go down. There's 40 something verses in this chapter, 48 verses in the chapter. We probably won't get through all of them. But the next section of verses, more or less up to verse 26, is about how rare and precious it is to have this opportunity that we have now to basically be a human being, have our sense faculties complete, have some faith or interest in spiritual practice, especially in the Buddhist teachings, and then have the opportunity to cultivate this incredible attitude, striving for enlightenment. So on one hand, what a rare and precious opportunity that is. And then on the other hand, how this opportunity, it doesn't last very long because inevitably death will come, or sickness. And we have no idea when that will happen. So the opportunity that we have to actually make the most of this opportunity is very short, and we have no, if we don't take advantage of this opportunity now, it will be a huge loss, for sure. So those are kind of the things that this next set of verses are talking about. So I'll explain some of those, and then we'll do some meditation on the meaning of those. So one thing I want to try to inculcate in you, the audience, while we're going through this book, The Bodhisattva's Way of Life, is just, because this is really, I mean, it's in verse form, right? So there's a lot of meaning and very few words, very dense words. It's not like reading a novel or reading a kind of a newspaper or something like that. It's quite different. There's a lot of rich meaning that if you don't stop and think about the words, then you won't see, you won't access, you won't be able to experience for yourself. And there's a lot to think about in what he's saying. So really, this kind of book is it's not the kind of book you just read once and then put back on the shelf and leave it. It's the kind of thing, if you like, and if you feel it's beneficial, then you can go back to again and again and use it like a resource and think about again and again. So one thing I want to try to inculcate in you is the habit of just reading a few verses and then sitting and thinking about it, meditating on it. So that's what I'd like to do this morning a little bit, is go through some of the verses and then do some meditation. So while we meditate, then I won't say, now think about this, now think about this, now think about this. Rather, I'll just say, well, look, we've just explained these verses, so think about whatever you want in relation to those verses. Look at one or two or more, and then just think about the meaning and see how it appears to you. If it's true or if it's not true, what kind of questions arise related to the meaning of those verses, or if something he says appears very true, accurate, and meaningful to you, then how does that relate to different things, different issues you're dealing with in your life, and how you want to change as a person, become a better person. Okay, so we're on page 27, then verse 12, the top. So there it says, "Therefore, just as I have promised, I shall respectfully accord my actions. If from now on I make no effort, I shall descend to lower and lower states." So just those first two lines, I mean, there's a huge amount to think about. Just those two lines. It says, "Therefore, just as I have promised." So here it means not making any promise, but making this promise to strive for enlightenment, full enlightenment, in order to work for the welfare of other sentient beings. So just as I have promised, meaning I've generated aspirational bodhicitta, or taking the bodhisattva vows, you can also think. Therefore, just as I have promised, I shall respectfully accord my actions. Right? So to accord our actions means to bring our actions in line with, to make our actions something that reflects this promise. So there's there's everything to think about. There's a huge amount to think about just in that. I mean, think about all of our actions, right? Then how can we bring them in accord with this promise of bodhicitta? And then there's a question, well, what things we do are kind of support and reflect us having this attitude of bodhicitta well, and are an outflow of that, or a reflection, are a reflection of that virtuous mind. And what things that we do or think or say are totally antithetical to this idea of bodhicitta. And so how can we reduce instances of getting angry, or just being lazy, or just spending a lot of time in sort of frivolous distraction that doesn't help bring us closer to enlightenment whatsoever? And how can we so kind of generate regret for all the things that are in discord with, or not in accord with aspiration for enlightenment, and try to think, how can I reduce, lessen those in the future, and then think about all the things that we do that are in accord with this aspiration to achieve enlightenment and rejoice and kind of pat ourselves on the back and think, oh, yeah, that's very good. And how can I continue to and increase those actions in the future? So in short, I mean, the whole Buddhist path is kind of summarized in these two lines. Therefore, just as I promised, I shall respectfully accord my actions. So that's an example of how you can meditate on just those lines. And then the second two lines are more kind of a warning, and it's summarizing most of what we talked about yesterday evening, the kind of all the drawbacks for letting bodhicitta decline and giving it up. If from now on I make no effort, I shall ascend to lower and lower states. So yesterday I was mentioning how, because we're so habituated to afflictive emotions like greed and attachment and selfishness and anger from past lives, then if we make no effort to generate virtuous states of mind and live a very virtuous life, I mean, different people differ, right, according to their habits from past lives. But I know for many of us, if we don't make some effort to think and act and speak in a virtuous way, and just ignore it and just do whatever comes to mind without really thinking about it and analyzing, then yeah, we easily engage in a lot of afflicted ways of thinking, destructive ways of thinking and acting, which would lead us to lower realms. So we have to make effort. Yeah. Okay. So then, verse 13. Although for the benefit of every creature, countless Buddhas have passed by, I was not an object of their care because of my own mistakes. Yeah, so this is a really interesting way of thinking. Thinking that, like Shakyamuni Buddha existed 2,000, I mean, he lived on the earth for 80 years, 2,600 years ago. So where was I then? Just thinking about oneself, why was it was I able to meet him or receive teachings from him? If so, then did I, sort of, why am I still taking rebirth and under the sway of, under the power of karma and afflictive emotions at this point? Why wasn't I liberated from samsara or achieved enlightenment like so many thousands and thousands of people during the Buddha's life and then in the generations that have followed until now? And in the same way, I mean, Shakyamuni Buddha is the fourth of 1,000 Buddhas who will come to earth in this fortunate eon. So then, during those first three Buddhas, again, where were we? And then this isn't like the only, I mean, if you look at our continuum of consciousness, and the number of past lives we've had infinite past lives. So it's not like we just came into existence with the existence of this, when this world system came into existence. So it's not like we've only existed during the time that 4 Buddhas have come to this earth. Rather, we've existed taking rebirths in countless, in beginningless time. Right? So countless times in the past, we've been alive in some form when a Buddha has come to the world system we're in. But we didn't benefit from that Buddha in such a way that we've already achieved liberation and enlightenment. Still, we're taking rebirth as an ordinary human being. So of course, this all depends on understanding like why does the past and future lives exist, and why it is that it's not possible to have a beginning of a continuity of one person's consciousness. But if you can kind of resolve those questions and agree with the sort of Buddhist worldview, then yeah, it's a big question that comes up. Well, I mean, the big question that comes up is like, why am I still experiencing the sufferings of birth, sickness, old age, and death, and then not sure my next life where not having any autonomy, not having any control over, or not having exact control over where I'll take rebirth in the next life. Why am I still in this state of being an ordinary being, in short, who hasn't entered any path of accumulation on up? So, I mean, the only real answer is because we haven't, even we've been exposed to true spiritual teachings in the past, we haven't really put much effort into practicing. I mean, that's the only logical conclusion, is from our side, we haven't really made the required effort, right? So what that means is, in the future, it's the same. If we don't make effort to practice, then in the future we'll just experience the same kind of problems we have in this life, again and again and again. So that's what he's getting at. Although for the benefit of every creature, countless Buddhas have passed by. So from the Buddhist side, in order to benefit every living being, they come again and again and again. So, and here he's talking about when countless Buddhas have passed by, he's mainly talking about, because like I was saying yesterday, we don't know who's a Buddha and who's not. There definitely are Buddhas like alive now. I mean, there are enlightened beings emanating in different forms now, but they don't appear as Buddhas, right? So what he's talking about is someone like Shakyamuni Buddha, who takes the aspect of a supreme emanation body. That's what Shakyamuni Buddha, that's what that aspect is, where he has like different miraculous kind of signs and powers, and shows those, and has the aspect of being a fully ordained monk and performing miracles, and widely has the sort of power, what shows the aspect of attaining full enlightenment in that life, in Bodh Gaya, under the Bodhi tree, and then travels around teaching Buddhism in a way that, I mean, and also I guess, in a way that the Dharma spreads widely. Right? So like His Holiness the Dalai Lama is, is an enlightened being, and he shows the aspect of being a fully ordained monk, but he shows the aspect of this being an ordinary practitioner, more or less, or someone who's achieved maybe the path of accumulation in this life. I mean, according to what His Holiness says, the path of accumulation, the path of preparation in this life. But he's not showing the aspect of achieving full enlightenment in this life, and then radiating light and flying through the sky and causing miraculous things to appear and doing a lot of miraculous things like Shakyamuni Buddha did. He doesn't show the aspect of having clairvoyance or being able to heal sickness or things like that. So what it's talking about here, when many Buddhas, countless Buddhas have appeared in the past, these countless Buddhas have appeared in the supreme emanation body, the way Shakyamuni Buddha did. Okay. So although for the benefit of every creature, countless Buddhas have passed by, I was not an object of their care because of my own mistakes. So here, I was not an object of their care doesn't mean that they didn't care for us or they didn't teach us, but that we weren't able to be like a disciple who was led to, in that life, led to liberation or enlightenment. Like if you read the sutras, even the Pali Canon, many times the Buddha is just teaching an assembly of people, and then just through the power of that teaching, through the power of the Buddha's, on the blessing of the Buddha's mind and the blessing of the Buddha's speech, and also through because of the merit, the great store of merit that the people in the audience have. I mean, it must take an incredible amount of merit to be taught by like a supreme emanation body. But through the merit of those disciples, then even in the course of like an hour-long or 2-hour-long talk, many achieve, they achieve liberation from samsara or other high states of being. So that didn't happen to us in the past, right? Why not? I was not an object of their care because of my own mistakes, it says. And then verse 14, and if I continue to act like this, again and again I shall undergo suffering in unhappy realms, sickness, bondage, laceration, and the shedding of blood. So here, he's not saying that that we're all bad people or we're all do bad actions. Even the Shantideva, of course, he's talking about himself, right? Because he's the speaker. Saying, if I continue to act like this, and Shantideva, I mean, he's already a Bodhisattva. He's a very highly realized being at this point. But basically, he's inviting us just to look at the faults that we have, because it's not that we don't have faults, right? Obviously we do, or we would have achieved some higher level of spiritual realization at this point, right? So he's inviting us just to look at why is it that we haven't achieved liberation and enlightenment up till now. And look at all the ways that we act that are detrimental to progress on the spiritual path for ourselves. And if I continue to act like this, so that's what I mean, act like this. If I continue to act like this, again and again I shall undergo suffering in unhappy realms, sickness, bondage, laceration, and the shedding of blood. So basically he's saying the main cause of taking rebirth in upper realms in samsara, especially as a human being or as a god of the desire realm, is practicing morality, pure morality, not harming others, not killing, not stealing, not lying, not engaging in adultery, not I said not lying. Anyway, then not lying, not using harsh speech, not slandering others, There's the 10 non-virtuous actions. Not following a mind of covetousness, not generating a mind of malice or anger. So it's the opposite of that that causes us to take rebirth in the lower realms, right? Doing all those things. Killing, stealing, adultery, lying, slander, harsh speech, and idle gossip, and then covetousness, malice, and ignorance. So it's all of the non-virtuous actions. So as long as we don't refrain from it, and we continue to engage in non-virtuous actions, then we'll take rebirth in the unhappy realms. So as an animal, a hungry ghost, or helping, and if we do that, then we experience sickness, bondage, laceration, shedding of blood, all the different sufferings of the lower realms. Then verse 15, if the arising of a tata, so here he's, okay, so from verse 15 he's talking about the rarity of this opportunity that we have now to practice Dharma. If the arising of the Tathagata, so here again means a supreme emanation body, like Shakyamuni Buddha. If the arising of the Tathagata, faith, so there's 4 things. The arising of the Tathagata, then having faith in the Buddha, the attainment of a human body, and my being fit to cultivate virtue are scarce. When will there be one again? So these are called the four circles. So just think about each one. We'll just briefly think about each of the 4, one by one. So think how rare it is that a supreme emanation body appears in a world. Like 2,600 years ago, Shakyamuni Buddha appeared. And then it was thousands and thousands, if not millions of years before that Kashyapa Buddha appeared, and then the Buddha before that, and the Buddha before that. Right? There's 3 previous Buddhas of this fortunate eon. So it's said that the next Buddha to appear in this world system, in this supreme emanation body, is Maitreya Buddha. So it's said that when will he appear? He will first. It's like millions of years later. It's first the lifespan of human beings will gradually decline due to the increase in non-virtuous actions and increase in afflictive emotions, and the decrease of the richness of the environment, the external environment. So the lifespan of ordinary human beings will decline until it's just 10 years, and the size of the body is very small, like this. And then Maitreya will appear as someone who's taller and teach virtue. Right? He'll appear as kind of, not as a Buddha, but as a kind of sort of very wise, talented, kind of virtuous leader of people, right? Kind of will appear having all the qualities of a leader and a teacher of people at that time. And then he'll teach the practice of the morality of abandoning the 10 non-virtuous actions. And then people will follow his teaching, and then due to practicing pure morality, that their lifespans will increase, the size of their bodies will increase, and then when their lifespan reaches 100 years, and they have this sort of size of the body like us, again, then Maitreya Buddha will appear as a supreme emanation body and teach the Dharma, just like Shakyamuni Buddha did. So that's a long, long, long time in the future. So the point is that it's very rare, right, that a Buddha appears in this form in the world. It's extremely rare. So now we're very fortunate to exist. Of course, it's not that Shakyamuni Buddha exists now, but all of his teachings exist intact at this time, right now. So probably 500, 1,000 years from now, it won't be like that. His teachings won't exist intact. So although we don't exist at the time of a supreme emanation body, Buddha appearing, we exist at a time when still all of the Buddha's teachings exist. They exist in print form. They also exist in realization form. There are beings around who have realized what the Buddha realized, and are willing to explain it. And there's opportunities to study and practice, like quite a lot of opportunities to study and practice. So in that way, we're very fortunate. But then think about even all these kind of Buddhist teachings exist now, how few people in the world have faith in them or interest in them. I mean, one, how few have interest, right? Yeah, most people in the world aren't really interested in Buddhist teachings. And then even of those who are interested, many it's just in an intellectual or an academic way. The interest isn't really very strong. And so there's no faith, there's no real belief. It's more like they're just kind of interested to know about, but they don't have faith. Have belief in or trust in, or belief in the Buddhist teachings. That's come about ideally through investigation and reason and critical thinking and understanding, comparing and experimentation in one's own experience. I mean, some also have blind faith, but that's much less stable. So then, if you're a person who has faith in the Buddhist teachings, because they're true, then how fortunate that is, right? So again, the sense of fortune and having faith in the Buddhist teachings should come about through analyzing to see if the Buddhist teachings are true. Right? If we have faith in something that's not true, that's not going to be very helpful. Actually, that's more harmful than it is helpful. So having a sense of the good fortune of having faith in Buddhist teachings is very much tied to understanding why they're accurate, right? Why they're an accurate reflection of reality. And then the third thing is the attainment of a human body, right? So even if there might be, beings that exist like devas or gods and goddesses who exist at the time a Buddha comes or at the time the Buddhist teachings exist, and they have faith in the Buddhist teachings, but due to not having a human body, it's very difficult to practice, and especially they can't practice Hayasya Tantra. Right, for other reasons. But it's said that to achieve enlightenment, actually you need to do so on the basis of a human body. Right, so the human body is the best basis for practicing the path and for achieving enlightenment. Even like imagine if, of course, obviously if we're reborn as a hell being or a hungry ghost or an animal, it's extremely difficult. You try to teach a dog or a cat about the Dharma and how to meditate, you're going to get nowhere, right? You can't practice on the basis of the human body. Well, cats, they sit very still for a long time, but not sure, they're probably just thinking about mice or something. Or just enjoying the warmth of the sun and where the next meal is coming from, or wanting to be pet or something. Not sure what's happening in the mind. But even if we take rebirth as a deva or a god, where you have a body that's made of light, you don't need to sleep, you don't become tired, you don't need to go grocery shopping or cook food or use the toilet, you don't subsist on gross food, and you have continual pleasure. You don't have, of course, sufferings. But on the basis, if you have that kind of life or that kind of body, it's very difficult to generate renunciation for samsara, right? It's very difficult to abandon attachment for samsara because everything goes well. So why would you want to get out of samsara? It seems just fine, right? So it's said because of that it's impossible to generate. It's difficult to generate renunciation at first, and then also it's very difficult. You can't generate the path of seeing on the basis of as a god. You can only generate the path of seeing, which is when you first generate a direct realization of emptiness. It has to be done on the basis of the human body, because the human body has the appropriate balance of suffering, such that we can have strong revulsion or strong revulsion towards samsara, but also have intelligence. Of the 6 kinds of beings in samsara, humans have the sharpest intelligence, sharpest faculties of reasoning and introspection and analysis. So you need that to then generate a realization of emptiness. So again, then it's extremely rare and fortunate to have a human body. And then the fourth thing is that my being fit to cultivate virtue are scarce. So even if we, of course, if we're with the lower realms, we're not fit to cultivate virtue. But even as a human being, even if we have faith in the Buddhist teachings, if we, our mind is impaired, by some kind of sickness or disease or birth defect, or we're blind or deaf, or otherwise crippled. I mean, all those can be impairments to practicing the Buddhist teachings. Or we have like chronic depression, or bipolar disorder, or we're surrounded in an environment that we're surrounded by warfare or natural disaster, or other crises that demand our attention. Then all of those things can become obstacles to practicing Dharma. So as much as we're free from those kind of conditions that would be major obstacles to practicing the Dharma, then we should be grateful for them. So that's what he's talking about, and it says, "And my being fit to cultivate virtue are scarce." So the coming together of these four things are extremely rare, extremely scarce. It's the arising of this Tathagata faith, the attainment of the human body, and my being fit to cultivate virtue are scarce. When will they be one again? When will all these four conditions come together in this way again? Like, it's impossible to say. So that's, and then the next thing is talking about how long they'll last. So let's look at 16. Verse 16. "Although today I am healthy, well-nourished, and unafflicted, life is momentary and deceptive. The body is like an object on loan, but for a minute." So although today I'm healthy, like tomorrow I might not be. I could get in a car accident, or fall, or suddenly get some kind of disease, eat some food that's poison, that has some kind of contamination in it. I just saw on the news this morning, I think 400. Some cruise ship in America is just turned back. It's like going on a cruise. It's supposed to go on a cruise around the Caribbean islands in the US. But 475 people on the ship all got sick. Like, there's probably something in the food. That they all got sick. So then the cruise ship has to turn back so they can get treatment. So like that. Although today, right now, we're healthy, it's not sure how long it will last. We're well nourished. Also not sure how long that will last. We're unafflicted by different. I mean, here it's probably, since the previous two are looking more like physical things, we're unafflicted. Probably think we're unafflicted by some kind of mental, mental illness. Like recently. I mean, sometimes you meet people who have like Alzheimer's disease or are experiencing dementia as they become old. And it's really shocking to see. And usually we don't meet people who have those kind of condition. But when you see, like, it's really an eye-opener to see like how fortunate we are to have just a clear, kind of stable mind where we can remember like what happened, just a few seconds ago, or we can understand, identify the people in the environment around us, and I know kind of what's going on in the environment, and be able to follow a conversation. Those are things we ordinarily do, we just take for granted. Like, we don't think about how fortunate that is. But then you meet someone who has dementia, and they start a sentence, and then they trail off in the middle, and they can't finish, or they can't remember what you just said in a couple sentences before, and they talk about something completely different, or they talk about the same thing that you just talked about a minute before, but they don't remember that you just talked about that, and then talk about it again. One of my friends, some of you know Fariza in Assam, her mother just had a stroke recently. And after the stroke, then her mother has quite severe kind of dementia. She can't remember what's going on from moment to moment. And so then the person has a lot of fear because they don't know what's going on around them. Sometimes even can't recognize the people around them. Or even last time I went to the U.S., just some months ago, I went to volunteer at a Baptist church to do a couple times to feed homeless people. I think several times a week they offer a meal to homeless people in the area, in that city. So I went to just help serve food and then lead some meditation afterwards. Actually, I was hoping to lead meditation, offer meditation instruction to homeless people, because that's people who usually don't have access to kind of instruction on meditation, opportunity to learn how to meditate. But then, the first time, well, anyway, I'm kind of digressing, but So while before we serve the meal, the other volunteers, we just sit together and talk and introduce oneself to each other and kind of make a prayer, generate a positive motivation. Basically, make a prayer for the well-being of, if people have specific intentions to pray for, or just kind of mentally prepare to serve the homeless people that are about to come into the dining hall. But there were these two women there that are friends, and one of them has Alzheimer's, which, of course they're not just tell you when they come in the room, like this person has Alzheimer's, but she was acting a little strange, I could see. And then in the middle of, she would get very upset about sort of totally innocuous things. Actually, when I first come in, because I was in robes, right? Because I always wear robes, wherever I go. So, and I was the youngest person there. So she came up to me and was like, "Oh, hi, I'm da-da-da-da," and gave me a big hug, which is kind of unusual. And then kind of started like caressing me all over and being like, "Oh, you're so nice." And I was a little like, okay, well, this person is overly affectionate, like what is going on? But then her friend kind of took me aside and said, "Oh, she has Alzheimer's, like she doesn't realize like what's appropriate and what's inappropriate." And then I went again a couple weeks, and her friend was there, but that woman wasn't there, and she said it's just become her mind's become too kind of, I don't know, unclear or too unstable or too out of touch with reality to be in an environment like that again. Like, so and that woman, it's not like they were really old, like, all wrinkled and walking on a cane. They were just like, healthy, very intelligent, healthy looking person, and maybe her 60s, maybe 55, 60, like not that old. So for me, it's a real eye-opener that, and probably someone that's not healthy. She looked like very healthy, probably mentally active life, but none of us know like when something like that's going to happen. Then once that happens, like your opportunity to practice Dharma is over. Like it becomes almost impossible. You have some kind of illness like that. And similarly, talking about our good fortune. So I was telling you, I was planning to. My whole intention for making contact with the church was because I knew they serve a population of homeless people, so I thought through them I could offer meditation to homeless people. But then when I was serving the food, you see, like most of the people that are homeless, it's because either they have like drug addiction, and a lot of them have drug addiction because they have severe mental problems like depression or bipolar or I can't remember the names, but other schizophrenic. A lot of people are schizophrenic, or other like severe mental illness, and that's a big reason of why they're homeless. And another one is that, or like post-traumatic stress disorder or severe depression. For most of them, some things have gone severely wrong in their life, and then they have this real mental burden. And then others, like I was saying, alcohol, drug addiction, but then. I wasn't sure. While I was serving the first meal, I thought, okay, now I'm going to have to lead meditation with these people. So I was kind of like mentally preparing myself. How am I going to try to do this? But then I think it was kind of the wisdom of the organizers. They didn't tell me, but they didn't advertise the meditation to that population. They had just advertised it to the people who come to the church regularly. So then I went to the place to lead meditation, and it's just this group of middle-aged people who come to the church, and then, we did a meditation session, and then later I kind of realized, like, actually that's probably really smart, because it would be almost impossible to lead, to teach a whole group of people like that with severe mental problems. Like, if one person, it might go fine. Like, for most of the people it would be okay, but there's a few people in the audience, if they start acting out and getting really irritated or agitated or just like asking endless questions that don't really have to do, then for the whole, it could quickly fall apart. Like, it would be really difficult to lead the audience. So I haven't given up. Like, I still want to try to find some way to kind of weed out the people who could like sit through and absorb and benefit from a session like that from the people who would potentially like kind of distract the whole thing.
It's just like our work at the female prison. It's their needs are so different from. Meditation comes in after some of your basic needs are taken care of. They have the mind space.
Yeah.
say, I need to really look inside.
Yeah.
And the people there are going through such trauma, just losing their children, being separated from them, or losing family.
Yeah.
When we go to the prison, the only thing they seem to be somehow divert all of us, in the female prison especially, to, can you send a note to my son? Can you send something? The demands are, the needs are different at that point of time, and somehow.
Yeah, sometimes you have to give up. I mean, if you have one goal to do this, you have to give that up and just serve the needs of the population.
Yeah.
For sure, yeah. Yeah, and that would definitely be the case if I was trying to, serve a population of homeless people. But yeah. But I mean, I was kind of talking about that because the point is, yeah, to see that. I mean, not only. I mean, yeah, there's certain needs that need to be addressed, and it's like so for us too. For us, where those needs are addressed. Like for us, those needs have been addressed. Like we have the mental clarity. We're free from kind of severe mental illness. We have a healthy body. We have intelligence. We have interest. It's like there's so many conditions that ordinarily we're not very grateful for. We don't really appreciate. But if you stop and think about it, there's so many conditions that we have that we should really be grateful for, and really think, okay, now I have to use this opportunity, like right now, because when am I ever going to have this kind of opportunity again, and how long is it going to last? I have no idea. So that's the point of this verse 16. So, and then the body is, finally, the last verse refers to death. The body is like an object on loan before a man. So even this body, ordinarily we think I am this body. When I stop existing in this body, I cease to exist. But the stream of consciousness goes on. But just having this human body and being able to use it to hear, to see, to read, to think, to meditate is something that is just like on loan, like a pair of shoes at the bowling alley. You just use for a time and then you give up. All those shoes at the bowling alley, somebody else uses afterwards. They're body, somebody else will use afterwards. And then verse 17, with behavior such as this, I shall not win a human body again. So again, he's looking at, here Shantideva, he's looking at all our faulty behavior. Not that all our behavior is faulty, but just looking at the kind of faulty behavior that we have. With behavior such as this, I shall not win a human body again. And if this human form is not attained, there will be solely wrongdoing and no virtue. Yeah, so that last line he's going to expand on below. But in short, he's talking about so now we have this human body, but if we don't use our human intelligence and use this opportunity to generate more peace of mind, more compassion, more human affection, kindness, practice morality, then we won't win a human body again, and rather we'll take rebirth as an animal or a hungry ghost or in hell realm. So if we take rebirth in one of those 3 lower rebirths, then how will we practice virtue? Like, just think about animals. It's it's the least suffering of the 3 hell realms. But what can an animal do to engage in virtue? It's extremely rare. Definitely there's some instances when animals create virtue. Like, the most obvious is like a mother, among mammals, then the mother caring for the young. But it's very rare. Even like, and then in the course of, even like, cats or tigers or other carnivorous animals, even the mother caring for the young, to do that, have to kill other animals, there's non-virtue. Killing is one of the heaviest non-virtues.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
You were talking about the homeless and the afflicted, and therefore they are not able to follow the path.
Mm-hmm.
So does that mean that they have, it's because of their past lives, and in a sense you could say they have,
yes,
they have
because of karma.
Yeah, so,
that they've
but it
created
seems rather
past,
sad
yeah.
because they look so helpless, isn't it? They can't help it. In this life at least.
Yeah, it's extremely sad. It's extremely
does
unfortunate.
that mean, so what is the point in even feeling compassion for them? If it seems that they are in any case going to suffer, it's inevitable, and they will in their next life also suffer.
Well, not necessarily, because, they've created the karma to experience that suffering, but the results of that karma only last for a time, and then some other karma ripens. So, I mean, compassion is just wishing someone to be free from suffering.
So they will not be free of their suffering.
No, they will be
unable to
eventually.
follow.
Eventually they will be. Maybe not even in this life, maybe not in next life, but eventually they'll be free from
So in a
from
sense
suffering.
you can say they deserve what they get, if you have to be very crude about it.
Well, if you want to be very crude about it, it's not like they deserve, because deserve carries a lot of carries a connotation like they should experience that.
No,
So we're
meaning
not
it just
making any
happened
kind of
in a-
should statement, but it's just a natural result of causes that have been created
So
before.
one should feel even greater compassion for them.
Exactly. One should feel greater compassion for them because, I mean, it's unknowing. It's not like they created the causes. It's not like they created the causes to experience severe mental illness, like later on, knowingly, but rather it's just like us. You know, when we have the seeds of anger within us. So sometimes somebody does something and we get angry. We get angry at them, and then might have very vicious or malevolent thoughts. But and that creates karma, right? So for us, we might have some understanding of karma, but for most people, they don't have any understanding of the law of cause and effect, right? So then having created that cause, then it ripens as an effect later on, just by nature. It's not like someone says that should be that way or shouldn't be that way. There's no judgment involved. It's just like this is there's a natural law of cause and effect. So people who have severe mental illness, they're experiencing the results of karma that they created earlier. So we should have compassion just for the fact that they're suffering, and I wouldn't want to suffer like that. Why would I want? Of course I wouldn't. We don't want anyone else to suffer like that. But it's also there's not much. It's like the suffering of an animal. Like just because a person is born in an animal realm and they experience hunger and thirst and being used and abused by human beings or being attacked by other animals or living in a lot of fear. It doesn't mean that we can't wish for them to be free of that. And it doesn't. And that compassion is the wish for them to be free from suffering. And it's a realistic wish because
Does it actually translate into maybe actually helping them? I mean,
it does. Yeah, of course.
Meaning, can one's actions affect another person's karma? Is what I'm asking.
Can one's actions affect another person's karma?
Good
Yes.
actions, meaning to say.
Yes.
Yes.
They can. Yeah. But for us, it's very limited. But definitely, just mentally have the intention for that someone else. Like imagine you're in the same room with someone who's like very deranged, mentally very deranged. Imagine like you could have three different states of mind. One, you could be very antagonistic with the person. Like, I hate being here. I hate that person. I just don't want to be around that person. I mean, definitely the person's going to feel some degree of that. You could just have a neutral state of mind, not antagonistic, and also not compassionate, just disinterested, just being here. Then it's like not very different from an inanimate object. But it's quite strange because you have the ability to have compassion and have some kind of sympathy for the person, but you don't, right? So that's also, a little hurtful, probably. But then even you're in the room with that person and they can't understand you, you can't communicate them. You can't obviously affect them in any way. But just having a sincerely benevolent intention towards them, wishing that they have happiness, wishing they'd be free from suffering. Definitely there's on some level that's going to be felt by that person. It's going to resonate with them. So just having that intention is something. And then, is something that has its immediate result. But also, because you have that intention, then it's going to lead you into thinking, well, what can I do in a more tangible way to benefit this person? If you don't even have that intention in the first place, then you're not even going to start thinking about or be led into action that's going to do something more tangible. So
we say that intention is like necessary. Ultimately, and isn't that why we wish for omniscience? Because only if we have the Buddha perspective can we understand how to actually help them. So we need intention, but then we also need to understand causes and conditions. What are the right causes that will allow them to be helped?
That's one. To actually help them, we don't have to be omniscient, but to perfectly help them, we have to be omniscient. So, if we could see that person's past life, in a past life, what kind of karma did they create to experience that, schizophrenia or depression or whatever in this life? If we knew that and knew exactly, well, what could I say or do that might have the best possible effect on that person at this moment? Like if we had that kind of mental clarity and wisdom, it would be better. We could be much more skillful at helping the person. But it's definitely not the case that that we shouldn't have compassion because it's inevitable that people are going to suffer like that. It might be inevitable that someone's going to suffer for a time, but then gradually the causes of that suffering come to an end and they move on. So we can have, we want to contribute towards that process as much as we can.
Also,
yes.
We are the first beneficiaries of the compassionate attitude.
Yes, thank you. Yes. Also, yeah, very good point. Yeah. I mean, if we have a compassionate attitude, we benefit immediately, from just having that attitude. For us, it's beneficial, right? And for ourselves, it's destructive if we just think, whatever, they're suffering, so there's nothing I can do about it. So, yeah, that's also an important point. Yeah.
Sometimes we forget that when we look at somebody else, we forget that we do have a karma that sometimes pushes us towards, our own negative karma also ripens. So at that point of time, if we are in an environment where we are going to say, oh well, they are going through that and there's no out for, it's a reciprocal thing, right? And so if when we are going through a bad phase or something like that, people do respond to us compassionately. So otherwise it becomes a very kind of a coarse living thing where nobody is compassionate towards each other.
Yeah, there's a danger of like that. We just become kind of cold-hearted. Okay, so let's look at verse 18. Sadhana, we'll do a little meditation first. Verse 18, if when I have the chance to live a wholesome life, my actions are not wholesome, then what shall I be able to do when confused by the misery of the lower realms? Right? So if in this opportunity we have to live a wholesome life, if we don't and our actions are not wholesome, then in the future life, when we take rebirth in a lower realm, then what will we do? Like, not only we have the difficulty of being reborn in the lower realm, but we don't have the habituation to engaging in wholesome actions. When we have the opportunity to engage in with a positive motivation to benefit others and bring peace, bring well-being to others, if we don't cultivate the habit to do that, then when it's very easy, then in the future, if we take rebirth in the lower realms, where it's incredibly difficult to practice virtue and to generate the intention to benefit others, because we ourselves are completely overwhelmed by sickness and pain and disease and hardship and ignorance also, as animals are. Then the external conditions are extremely difficult. Our karma karma obscurations are much thicker, and also when we had the opportunity to generate the habit to act in a wholesome way, we didn't. So also the habituation is very weak. Then it's almost impossible. That's what he's saying. If when I have the chance to live a wholesome life, my actions are not wholesome, then what shall I be able to do when confused by the misery of the lower realms? And then 19, and if I commit no wholesome deeds there, meaning in the lower realms, if I take rebirth in lower realms, if I commit no wholesome deeds there, but readily amass much wrongdoing, then for 100 million eons I shall not even hear the words "a happy life." Right. So he's adding the other element that not only we don't create the habit to engage in wholesome deeds now, but imagine just an animal realm is the easiest for us to imagine because we can see animals. So imagine you rebirth as an animal. There's so much fear of being attacked by other animals. Then the mind is very dull. There's very limited ability to think and reason and learn, and there's very limited ability just to think outside of your immediate survival. So it's very difficult to engage in wholesome actions there as an animal. But then not only that, we readily amass much wrongdoing. We readily amass much negative karma, much non-virtuous karma, because you can see how much just this. The street dogs that we see around, they argue, so much arguing, so much fear, so much jealousy. The stronger ones bullying the weaker ones. The weaker ones, just acting very subservient to the stronger ones. and arguing about a bowl of food, arguing about where to stay, coming into so much conflict. And then when they can, killing. If they're hungry and there's an opportunity to kill like a rat or kill a cat or something, then also killing animals. So you see, imagine, even though it's not like human non-virtue where, humans, we use our intelligence a lot to engage in non-virtuous actions. Animal, it's more just like this base instinct. And yeah, sometimes we might think, well, they don't know that's not, they don't know that killing is a non-virtuous action. So, but not knowing it, it makes it a little lighter, but it's still like harming another sentient being. How much they harm other sentient beings. So just harming another sentient being or harming oneself, that creates non-virtuous karma, right? So you can see in the animal realm, there's so much, even though it's their instinct. But yeah, that's one of the big drawbacks of being an animal, is you have an instinct, and you have, to survive, it's like to survive, there's no way around harming other sentient beings, for carnivorous animals, especially. For herbivores, like deer and stuff, there's a lot less negative karma created, because there's a lot less aggression and killing. So it's a much more peaceful kind of existence. But there's still a lot of attachment. Yeah, a lot of attachment, a lot of ignorance. So there's still some non-virtues created. So not only don't commit wholesome actions, but readily amass much wrongdoing. So then, you can imagine, because the main cause for taking rebirth as a human being is morality. The main cause for taking rebirth as a deva of the upper realms, the former formless realms, is meditative concentration. Right? So for animals, forget about meditative concentration. Like, there's no way they can generate the meditative concentration to take rebirth in the former formless realms. But even pure morality, extremely difficult to do. It's extremely difficult to intentionally refrain from lying, stealing, adultery, killing, and so forth. So it's because practicing pure morality is the main cause for taking rebirth as a human, and then additionally you have to relies on pure prayers and then practicing generosity and so forth. But the main cause is practicing pure morality. So if you're reborn as a hell being, a hungry ghost animal, extremely difficult to practice pure morality. So then you just not only you experience the karma that first threw you into the lower realm, and then then when you're in the lower realm, the other karmas you've accumulated in the past to take rebirth there, they also ripen. And then in the meantime, you also create more karma to take rebirth in the lower realm. That's why it's almost impossible to escape. Like once you've taken rebirth in the lower realm, which is another reason it's so incredible that now we've taken the fact that we've taken rebirth as a human being, ordinary human being, is like incredible. It's almost like something impossible happening.
That means we cannot be so bad as we think. We always think human beings are quite wicked and there's a lot of wickedness in the world. But if by that thinking, if we are human, that means we were worse, in other words. It means in our past life we've done something very good. To take rebirth as a human being means in our immediate past life we did something we created some very good karma. So we practice pure morality, basically. Definitely we practice a lot of pure morality. The fact that we have some affluence means we practice generosity. Also, it also means we made prayers. We made strong prayers to take rebirth in a good place and to take rebirth as a human. So definitely it means we were doing something very, very good in our past lives to take rebirth as a human now. So there is a lot of goodness in human beings.
Yes. Yeah, it's like it requires a huge amount of merit to take rebirth as a human being. Especially, with our faculties complete, with a stable mind, clear mind, with a healthy body, in a peaceful environment, where we can have contact with other good people, basically, in a good family. So yeah, but it's like we're using up an incredible amount of merit enjoying this existence, right? So to take rebirth in the existence we have now, it required a lot of really positive, us creating a lot of very positive causes and conditions. Now we're enjoying the results of those. So if we don't use this opportunity to create more causes for the same in the future, it won't just come like on its own.
So it's saying we have to use this opportunity to continue creating more causes for a good rebirth, of another good rebirth in next life, and then on and on and on, continue like that, but working towards a final result. I mean, the final result of a stable existence of peace, well-being, and happiness for ourselves, so that we can continue working for the welfare of others, which is nirvana. I mean, that's what nirvana is. It's like a state of peace, a wholesome existence that doesn't rely on karma. Rather, it relies on eliminating the causes of suffering. So it's not like we have to keep creating the causes again and again and again. Eventually, the causes for nirvana to extend are just created automatically by the wisdom and renunciation, the wholesome attitudes that we become fully habituated to. That's like enlightenment. The state of enlightenment, it's a result, right? We have to create the causes for enlightenment. But it's not, but then it becomes like an automatic cycle. Once we achieve the state of enlightenment, it's not like we have to work and make effort to create the causes for to enjoy more enlightenment. It's rather by being enlightened, automatically we're continually creating the causes to stay in that state. That's why it's a very stable state, right? Whereas a human rebirth, we've created a lot of causes to have this very enjoyable condition, existence we have now. But those causes will come to an end, and it's not that we automatically just create more causes to achieve a human rebirth in the future. Rather, because we're so habituated to afflictive emotions, different people vary to different degrees, but for most of us probably, we automatically create a lot of causes to take rebirth in a lower realm in the future. So that's why it's important to learn about the law of cause and effect. What are causes for happy rebirth? What are causes for miserable rebirth? And then put effort into modifying our behavior, our thoughts and our actions. Yeah. No, the 10 non-virtuous actions.
So all 10 non-virtuous actions comes under morality.
Yes.
Generosity, patience,
Oh, those are in addition. I mean, I think you're talking about generosity, patience, the 6 the 6 perfections.
perfection.
Yeah. I mean, of the 6 perfections, the first is generosity, right? So generosity is like the opposite of stealing, giving, right? And then the second is morality. So that morality, that includes all of the 10, abandoning all of the 10 non-virtuous actions. And then again, joyous effort, patience, joyous effort. So patience is the opposite of malice, right? Of the 3 non-virtues of mind, there's covetous, malice, and ignorance. So malice is basically anger. It's all the minds of anger. So patience is it's an antidote to that. It's not really the opposite, but it's the opposite. Instead of getting angry, not getting angry, like remaining patient, remaining calm. Yeah. So they go together. But the 6 perfections are especially practices of bodhisattvas. But then the last 2, meditative concentration and wisdom, they're not really included in morality.
So first, out of 6 perfection, first 4 is antidote to the 10 non-virtuous action.
All 6 of them can become antidotes to the 10 non-virtues. We don't really talk about antidotes usually we talk about antidotes to afflictive emotions, like ignorance and anger, and so the last 3 of the 10 non-virtuous actions are afflictive emotions. Covetousness, malice, and wrong views. So you can talk about antidotes to those, but we don't really talk about an antidote to killing.
That's a manifestation of klesha, isn't it?
Yeah, killing would be, usually it's motivated by a klesha. Yeah. There can be accidental killing.
That's ignorance.
Not necessarily ignorance, could just be, there's no motive, there doesn't have to be a motivation at all. It's just like, walking down the street and you step on an insect. It's not like you had any motivation to do that. It's not, no, but well, yeah, it's just kind of a limitation. It's not like a wrong view or even that you ignore. There could be cases when you're not ignoring. You're being very careful, but you just can't see. Right?
first, this is the, out of three levels, this is the first level to be able to get birth in human realm. So what are 10 non-virtuous actions to be abandoned? So the first level is just to abandon.
Yeah. I'm not sure I understand your question really.
So there is first level, second level, third level. Right? The first level is just to be take birth in, not to take birth in the lower realm.
The first, second, third level of what? Like what level?
Like first not to take rebirth in lower realm, then take rebirth in human realm, then the enlightenment.
Okay.
So the not to take rebirth in lower realm, so to do that, these 10 non-virtuous actions just to abandon.
Yes.
That is.
That's the main. Yeah, that's the main thing.
Small,
yeah. If you practice abandoning the 10 non-virtuous actions well, and that's like the main thing. That's like one of the main practices you do in this life. Then you won't take rebirth in the lower realms next life. Almost guaranteed. I mean, there's other things.
Other karmas.
Yeah, there's other, like, a lot depends on the state of your mind at the time you die, right? The state of the mind at the time of death also can become a big factor. But the main thing is the main karma you've created in this life. So if you put sincere effort into abandoning the 10 non-virtuous actions this life, then very difficult to take rebirth in lower realms in this life. You can almost be guaranteed it won't happen, right? But the scary thing is, I mean, sometimes, like, look at like, when you get severely sick, suddenly get severely ill. Look at the state of your mind. I mean, you can just generally be a very nice, kind-hearted, very tolerant, patient, good person. But then sometimes, you get really ill and you're tired and your body's racked with pain. You have fever, and yeah, some people become really short-tempered, angry, irritable. In that condition, right? So some things have to do, and then if you were to die like in that state, then I mean those negative states of mind that are foremost, if you have very negative states of mind foremost in your continuum at the time you die, then that can be a trigger for negative karmas to write up. Because we have mixed karma, infinite amount of mixed karmas from past lives. It's not only the karma from this life that causes our next rebirth, right? It's the strongest karma in continuum. I think he had his hand up first, and then
So, what about like when you get into those situations where things throw off the balance, and you usually sort of get into a state of fear, like especially if you're sick, sort of like worried about the body, and So, like, what is the karmic implications of sort of cultivating like what realm is it associated with? Is there a certain type of rebirth?
Fear. Fear expressly, I don't think so. I mean, just having different kind of fear, I don't think is associated specifically with creating karma to take rebirth in a specific realm. I mean, often fear is more like, I mean, it is an afflicted state of mind, but there's different, I mean, some fear can be just a result of karma ripening. It's a result of karma. But then there's another kind of fear where it's like you intentionally think in a way that causes you to have more fear. So at that time, then you're creating a habit. When you're just responding to a set of circumstances by being afraid, you're not involved in any intentional activity at that point. So it's not like you're creating new karma to be afraid. You're just experiencing the result of karma that you created before. But then if you think like severe anxiety, not anxiety, but what's another? There's a kind of thing, like when you think in a way that causes you to be afraid. Like there's things that you're afraid of, and you think of those things again and again and again, and think of all the reasons why.
Paranoia.
Kind of like paranoia, hypochondria. You intentionally think in a way that causes you to have more fear. You think of all the reasons you should be afraid, and you stir up your own fear. Then you're intentionally creating like a sort of thought habit. So then you're probably creating the causes to experience fear again in the future, right? But like if fear unintentionally arises, and instead you think and you try to apply antidotes to you can apply antidotes to being afraid, right? Think, well, try to make You can try to make accurate assessments of the dangers that you have. Like, well, there's a danger this could happen, so how can I deal with that? There's a danger this could happen, so there's a danger this can happen. So what's the best possible course of action I can take at this moment? Those are all like becomes antidotes to the fear. So then you're creating causes to not have fear in the future, but to deal with whatever circumstances arise in a more kind of rational, sort of clear-headed way. Right? But just fear in general, like like anger is associated with rebirth in hell. Like strong attachment, jealousy is associated with rebirth as a hungry ghost. Just like a sort of blindly hedonistic kind of attitude where we're just seeking sense pleasures, and it's kind of ignorant, and it is a kind of ignorance where we're not using our human intelligence, or not using our capacity to have more nuanced human understanding of things. We're just blindly following our desire for sense pleasures. There's a kind of, you create a karma to take rebirth in an animal realm. Like those are kind of clear, but fear is not really.
Could you say fear is also a sort of attachment? Right? Usually it's sort of losing something that you have and you're attached to.
Well, there's all fear is a big category. There's all different kinds of fears. There's afflictive fear. There's wise fear. There's yeah. I wouldn't. It can be associated with attachment, but I don't think always. Let's see. Well, let's just do some meditation for just 5 minutes. We're about to take a tea break. So we've gone through some nice material and had some good discussion. So as a kind of summary to this first half of the session, then let's just take 5 minutes and kind of meditate on or quietly reflect on any of the things that we've discussed so far. You can either, you could use the verses in the book. We've gone over verse 12 through 19. So if you like, you can read over those verses again, or you can just recall anything we've discussed so far and think about it. But just to review, the main things we've discussed are the great value of this attitude of bodhicitta, kind of what a shame it would be to lose the opportunity to continue enhancing it, and then how rare it is to be able to generate this mind of bodhicitta, which depends upon meeting the Buddha, having a good human rebirth, having faith, and a mind fit to cultivate virtue, and then all the sufferings that we don't have, and also the fact that these conditions, these very positive conditions, it won't last forever, because all kinds of death or other kinds of illness or other unfortunate circumstances can undermine this opportunity we have, can destroy this opportunity we have, and that what a waste it would be to not use this opportunity. And if we don't use now, then how in the future it will be very difficult to meet the circumstances again to practice the spiritual path in this way. Okay? So any of those things, we'll meditate on for 5 minutes from now. just stop there. So now we'll take a break for 15 minutes. There's tea and snacks and stuff over there.